Mike, yes, I forgot. I'm sorry. We need approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion? Second? All those in favor? Can you use your mic, please?
Like, hello. So I noticed some errors on the agenda, item D, or an item, no, item C, future meeting dates. List August 21st, list all of the meetings being held at this location. And we have previously approved the meetings to be August 21st at the Annalee Library, September 11th at the El Molino Library, October 9th at the Annalee Library, November 13th at the El Molino Library, and December 11th and 18th at the Annalee Library. So I would like to have that agenda amended.
We made a switch, I think.
I am asking for consideration for us to reevaluate the locations of where the meetings are at based on how much effort and energy it takes our staff to set up and break down during a school year. If we can maintain at least consistency for 2 or 3 months at one location, it's easier for us. So
So at this point, that's not an agenda
I'm
item. So
totally
we can't
understand.
discuss that.
I understand
So
that.
what's currently approved and what should be reflected in this agenda right now is that, and then perhaps we could bring that back on a future agenda. No, so if somebody wants to amend the motion to include the correction.
I'll amend the motion. Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye. Yeah, you should have that from the previous board minutes. Yeah.
All right. Action on items heard in closed session. I will be reading that. Trustee Fernandez moved to approve the recommendation of the administration to approve the settlement agreement between the West Monroe County Union High School District and a permanent classified employee. Trustee Aiello seconded the motion. In closed session tonight, the board took action to approve a resignation and release agreement with a permanent classified employee. The effective date of the resignation was July 16, 2024, with health and welfare benefits extending through November 2024. The vote was as follows. Trustee Aiello, aye. Trustee Ramirez, aye. Trustee Buckner, aye. Trustee Trinella, aye. And Trustee Fernandez, aye. Yes, 5, no, 0, and everything. Okay. Business services, before we talk about this action item, our superintendent has some new information he would like to share with us.
Typically we would have the board, our process would have the board make a motion. But I wanted to present the item and provide the board with a district's administration's recommendations. So I just closed out my notes, so I'm pulling that back up. So as you've all read through the background information presented in the item, it gives you some historical context on previous bond measures in our county and our district. And we've all identified some significant facility needs at both the Laguna former El Molino campus as well as the Annalee campus. We had initially planned to go out and explore the feasibility of a bond measure in 2026. With those glaring needs and the obvious escalation of costs, consumer price index, we knew that waiting until 26 would ultimately cost more money. And with the fact that this is a general election in November 24, we felt we needed to do our due diligence to explore the feasibility and hear from the community with regard to the possibility of going out for a bond measure. That's the why in terms of our exploration and the previous agenda items in which we asked the board for some direction to conduct the surveys. There's facility needs that go beyond what's remaining in the current series of our remaining bond of 24 million. And we have significant needs at the Laguna, former El Molino campus, specifically to help us address some of our future plans and our vision to create a community school with 3 programs under the Laguna umbrella. And you're all aware of this, but I wanted to reiterate this for the record. Those 3 programs would be the current existing program of Laguna Continuation, our new full-time, newly launched and rebranded full-time independent study program, West County I Academy, and what we hope to name as El Molino Academy with the new program we're anticipating launching in 25-26, which would be a non-comprehensive entrepreneurial type high school educational program. Non-comprehensive meaning it wouldn't mirror a high school program that has all of the extracurriculars and all of the bells and whistles. And what we're seeing, and you know this, but I'm reiterating it, is that post-pandemic, there are a significant number of students in our county and nationwide that are looking for a non-comprehensive program. We've utilized existing bond monies to continue to keep that campus running efficiently and adequate to serve the current students that are there. We've also addressed some of the glaring facility needs at Annalee High School. Let me pull up my notes. Facility needs at Annalee continue to be great. And we've talked about some of the future projects that will be considered and brought before the board in terms of recommending how we address and prioritize our aging facilities at both this site and at the Annalee site. And obviously, the consideration through the consolidation in terms of which campus to choose was a difficult decision for the board to make. And ultimately, the decision was made to host the large comprehensive high school post-consolidation here in Sebastopol at the Annalee campus. And we're in a really good position post-consolidation. Our enrollment has gone up well beyond projections, into the low 30% range. We've done a tremendous job post-consolidation of being the only comprehensive high school in the county that's seen increased test scores. So we're really proud of that effort. And obviously, we need to maintain our facilities to continue to serve the students who, are wanting to come to West County and also serve the students who are residents of West County. We did our due diligence through exploring the feasibility of this bond measure. I've talked to a lot of people in the community. I've received a lot of community input. We know that this is a tough time for our voters and taxpayers. My recommendation, board, is that we don't adopt this resolution, that we wait and consider going out for a bond in 2026 when it seems like it may be a little bit more feasible for our voters and taxpayers. We're really well aware of the impact that the current political climate has had on our community, and we feel it would be best to explore the possibility of looking at 26, which was our initial plan. Again, I want to reiterate why we explored the feasibility. Again, it's the existing facility needs. It's the cost of escalation and consumer price index. It's the general election, which is cheaper to explore bond measures. But at this time, based on everything I've heard from our community, I don't recommend that you approve this resolution. But now we have the foundation built. We have more information. We have an idea of the survey results, and they were favorable, but not as favorable as we'd like to see. In West County, we've always had overwhelming support for bond measures. We didn't feel that based on our survey results and the communication that I've had, that my team has had, and that the board has had with our community. So with all that said, I don't recommend that you adopt this resolution tonight.
So I would like to make a motion, and then we will second it, and then we will have our usual discussion, okay? Wanted to remind everybody of our process. I would like to move that we do not pass this resolution as listed.
So as a point of order, if no motion was made, this resolution would not pass. So is it necessary to make a motion to not pass a resolution? Or could it just
I don't
die
think-
without a motion? It doesn't.
My recommendation is that the board vote not table the item and stay
It's
with.
not
our
a
process.
table. It's just a motion to not approve.
Well, there is a consideration of approval
action
on
item.
the agenda.
It's an
So
action item.
I am moving that we do not consider to approve the motion.
I'll
Okay.
second.
You'll second it? Okay. Now, does the board have any questions or concerns?
Overall, I think that's the right decision, but I prepared quite a bit for this and I do have some questions and maybe even just to, be more prepared for 2026 or to answer community questions. I'd still like to go through. Some
Well,
of my-
Debbie, since the resolution is we're not accepting it, can you hold those?
I'll skip some of them, obviously. I mean,
does
like I was,
something
one of the
for-
questions, for example, was the cost of it. That's not important. But just in terms of process and how we've gone through this process, I do still have some questions about this item, whether we approve it or not tonight. So, and in your report, Chris, you did, welcome. You did talk about having received community feedback. In terms of the public comment, there were 7 public comments that were posted to the agenda. I haven't seen anything else. And the last slide on Greg Isom's presentation was that we would do some further outreach into the community. So where is that data?
That data was through organic conversations and the things that we've heard from our community at prior board meetings. I think we heard people speak at public comment. I've had conversations with different folks around the community. I don't feel it's necessary to name those folks, but I've been listening. And I believe that the board has received emails that weren't presented as public comment in the past few weeks. And I've seen those emails. So
So you've received, because people have mentioned to me that they sent in public comment about the bond. So I was surprised that there were only those 7. How do you determine what becomes public comment?
people have to acknowledge that they're submitting public comment when
They have to
email-
write this is public
Correct.
comment.
So
Okay.
we've received, overwhelming feedback regarding how the community feels, and it supports my recommendation to the board that this is just not the right time. In terms of our process and how it links to attaching those public comments to the agenda, we need people to acknowledge that they're submitting public comment via email. And we also host public board meetings where people can come in person and present their public comments. So
Clarification on our agenda, it states all public comments can be made by attending in person. Virtual attendees can make public comments regarding the agenda by emailing Karen by 3 p.m. on the day of the special board meeting. So any
Nothing
correspondence,
after 3 p.m.
correct?
So those 7 is what we received per our process and how it's outlined in the agenda.
And so they have to say this is public comment. It
I
can't,
am submitting public comment via email.
maybe
here's my
that should be
comment.
clarified.
Okay.
And also, we have received as a board, we've received correspondence
Mhm.
from internal staff to board at, and I thought that was a shortcut, but apparently it's only for internal.
Correct.
And so I would like to recommend, because this has been kind of confusing for the public, if they want to send public comment to every single one of us, they have to go and look for each address. I would be curious if there is an easier way, and maybe that's something we can agendize at the governance
I can
meeting,
s-
just about how to better,
I can speak to that because, the general public doesn't really know the parameters of the Brown Act. So a lot of times you are all CC'd on an email where the appropriate way to go about it is to BCC you. And thankfully our board is well aware of that. So you don't reply all. So then it's
Right.
not a violation of the Brown Act. You can
Right.
be on an email thread, but you can't all communicate on an email thread. I think it's pretty clear in the agenda, but I'd be happy to make it even more clear.
and maybe,
regarding-
and we can take that offline or at a future meeting. That's not about this agenda item, but
I
it's
think
just something
if
that
I'm
I
hearing you
noticed.
correctly, Debbie, it's wanting to ensure that we inform the public who may misinterpret what I believe is pretty clear language on the agenda with regard to how they submit public
Mhm.
comments. But
Yeah.
I'm happy to explore how to make that even more clear.
Great. Did you get here after the motion was made, Alina? Yeah, so I just want to, Julie, do you want to catch her up to where we are with what happened already, with, that there's a motion on the floor?
The motion on the floor is that we not pursue the bond.
Thank you.
Debbie, do you have any other concerns?
Let me just look at my notes and see which ones are still relevant now that we're looking to not pursue.
Actually, we already did.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let's see. Yeah, I just want to comment that in doing my research, I noticed the recent grand jury report that our district is within the top 5 indebted districts. We currently have 2 bonds outstanding. I think that's important to be aware of. And I think, you know, a lot of the public comment, all of the public comment was really about this community concern about El Molino closing and now asking for more money while we still have indebtedness for until 2046 and 2052. So I just wanted to
Well, I think
recognize
as
that.
Chris stated too, there is some misconception which he intends to address. I saw in the letters that we got there was some misinformation out there, and he said he was going to address that. So I think that will be great.
Right, but we currently have 2 outstanding bonds, one that matures in 2046 and one in 2052. And this one would have matured in 2061. Planet will be on fire by then. And then the fact that we're on the cusp of beginning this community dialogue about the ideal configuration for our schools and our districts, I think it really, there was some public comment about that as well, that we really shouldn't put the cart before the horse around that, and I agree. And then all of the other tax measures that are on the ballot that are coming up, and there is, I mean, also we may not even need the 2026 because the state is putting the school bond measure, a statewide school bond measure on the ballot for $10 billion.
We will not get any of those funds.
We'll be paying for it though.
Taxpayers will be paying for it, but I want to be very clear. The district only is entitled to about $2 million of state fund apportionment. And we would have to have already been on the list 5 years ago to be in line to get money. The line is so long that they can't fund it for the next 2 bond cycles, period.
Any other questions, Debbie?
Yeah, any other questions from the board or concerns? Go ahead, Jeannie.
I just wanted to thank Chris for your well thought out comments and the perspective that from what we've heard from folks. I know I've heard from a number of people also. The biggest concern is the fact that the city of Sebastopol is going out for a tax measure, a sales tax measure, and the fact that they just increased their water and sewage rates dramatically, which is going to affect our community dramatically. And the fact that there is this other bond measure for the state on the ballot too, I think it becomes overwhelming, and people just can't see their way through the cloud of all of that. So I think it's a very good idea that we hold off.
Thank you.
I'd also just like to say, Chris, I really appreciate the bond the bonds that you have developed with our community leaders and Rotary clubs, and just staying in touch with the people in our community. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public?
I actually have one more question. There was a lot of work done to create this resolution. You called on attorneys and so forth. Ballpark, how much did all of that work cost in staff time and developing a resolution?
That's a tough ballpark figure to give you, but we actually didn't have to work with any attorneys. ISOM advisors, they worked with us on this, and we didn't have to seek legal counsel or pay legal fees. So I don't know. Correct. Yeah, no additional costs. And I couldn't tell you what the staff costs were, but this is my job and my team's job to explore the feasibility of such a proposal and such an exploration. And I feel good. I'm glad we went through the process. We wouldn't have known how the community felt. We wouldn't have been able to really explore how we address these needs. And I think we're more equipped, well equipped to explore the feasibility for 26. Because there, as Jenny stated, we're not going to be eligible for any more than 2 million out of this state bond measure. And the facility needs, for any school district, the costs of construction and architects' fees, they're astronomical. So we are in a really great position. I'm extremely proud of where our district is and how far we've come over the past few years. We're really excited that this is a place that we have identified as a destination district for students as well as staff. And I anticipate continuing to see our enrollment incline while other districts are experiencing declining enrollment. So we're going to have to find a way to serve those students and address our facility needs. We're going to have to get creative. And we really value our Forestville campus. And we're going to continue to look at ways to keep that campus up and running to best serve students in addition to this campus.
Mhm.
So.
And I think taking a little bit more time and coming back to this in the future, I think starting the process a bit earlier so that the board really has time to deliberate on the project list. One piece of feedback that I received from the community, it just sounded very accurate. It's the way I was feeling, was that this isn't a project list. This is a type of project list. And I think in my experience and when I look at other school facility bonds, it's a little more specific than types of projects.
Well,
So
I mean,
I know we have a lot of deferred maintenance.
I think, Debbie, while that might be the case in some districts, Greg Isom and Isom Advisors, they do many bonds around the state, and there are the bond associates to be working with. And they don't recommend getting too finite because projects needs change through the course and over the time when you acquire a bond. So I think as we explore the feasibility of a future bond measure, we're going to continue to keep it overarching, but we can take more input from the community in terms of projects that our people recommend and identify in terms of the language in the resolution that could, kind of lay out the overarching types of facility needs that will be addressed. I think that's the appropriate way to do it.
Yeah, I think it is good
disagree
to be
with that,
specific.
actually, Debbie. The bonds that I have been involved with and seen, we have to kind of decide as what certain projects that come up, if they fit within the bond language, because you're never sure what is going to wear out, break, what needs to be replaced.
Right.
It can't be that specific. Otherwise, you kind of tie your hands
Right.
behind your
Yeah.
back and you can't fix things that need to be fixed. So
Yeah, I agree that
with
flexibility.
approach totally.
Oh, I agree. Flexibility is important in the language.
Yeah.
But I think all of it being, I think if the community is really going to wrap their mind around it, it's important to say this is the main reason we're going out for this very large sum of money. And then there would also be resources to do the deferred maintenance in addition to that, obviously, but to have something. And I don't know if there was even we had some public comment at the last meeting about Jim Walton not being available to run a bond measure. Did you do any investigation whether there was a community member who would be willing to carry it forward?
You don't put the cart before the horse, so you don't explore that until the board adopts a resolution. And that
Right.
was the advice of, again, the most experienced bond person I know. So had we felt that the district would confidently recommend, and as you saw in the language in the item, I didn't strongly recommend because I was continuing to do my due diligence and I wanted to come back with, after discussing what I've learned with my team and then sharing that very transparently with the board. So that would have put the cart before the horse. So my recommendation at this time is we stay the course on the action item. There's a motion on the floor. If there are no other questions really pertinent to that motion and this action item, I'd recommend that the board take their vote.
Yes, let's take a vote.
Wait,
We haven't had public comment.
Public
Oh, public
haven't
comment.
asked- we
I'm
haven't asked
sorry.
our-
I asked and nobody raised their hand, so I was moving on, but can you come up and to the podium? Thank you.
She needs to give you a microphone. Hold tight. No, we have to
We
because
have to because
Zoom.
it's recorded.
people online can't hear you. It's working. I'm Barbara DeCarli. I live in Guerneville. I just had a question in looking at the survey that was attached to the agenda. What does pre-education and post-education mean?
So it's public comment, not public question and answer. So our process is to just allow you to make comments, but not
Okay, well, my
engage with-
comment is the survey is highly confusing.
Understood. Thank you.
We hear you.
Thank you, Jenny.
That'd probably be easier. Thank you, Jenny.
I'll be like Vanna tonight. Hello. Thank you. Hi, thank you for having me today. My name is Vicki Miller. I'm a Forestville resident, and I also write for a local paper. And I appreciate that you guys have taken the bond off. I did meet with about 3 dozen parents that are here at Annalee from El Molino, and not one was in favor of the bond. So I was surprised to hear the low number of public comments, and I super appreciate you guys. And thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Are we ready to vote? Yes. Tell me your name again.
Elena.
You know,
Alina.
and I actually would just like to say that I agree as well with the decision to not bring it forward because even though obviously as a student, I'm all for school and facility funding in our education, I feel that we would be a bit in over our heads. So just thank you for that. And I'm so sorry for my tardiness. I was at an internship at the Bodega Bay Marine Labs, but that's no excuse.
And we're just glad you're here.
Thank you.
Debbie? We're voting.
We're voting. So I am voting yes to not move the
Okay.
bond forward.
Jeannie?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, yes. And Julie, yes. Aye, whatever. We went from aye to yes. So yeah, okay. Thank you. And thank you for all of you for coming and sharing with us your thoughts. And our meeting is adjourned.